Hello and welcome to Beyond Breathing, a workshop on relaxation and stress management. My name is Heather Horton and I'm the director of the Wellness Resource Center at Colorado College. This workshop is really designed to be an introduction to these topics, hopefully introduce you to some ideas of strategies and whet your appetite so that you'll go and learn more or practice these strategies and that they can be really useful to you. In order to manage stress, we really need to be able to understand it a little bit. And most of us are pretty familiar with some stress responses that when we feel stressed, we might notice things like muscle tension or increased heart rate or respiration rate, sweaty hands, maybe butterflies in our stomach, those kinds of things. And those symptoms of stress really come about through the physiological response to either threat or challenge in our lives. With the fight, flight, or freeze response, one of the things that happens is that our body tries to prepare us for a threat that is happening in our world by restricting energy to some parts of our body and brain and moving energy to others. So for instance, rather than focusing on digestion, we move energy to our skeletal muscles so that we're ready to fight, flight, or freeze. And that happens because there are certain blood vessels that get restricted and others that get expanded in the fight, flight, or freeze response. When we respond to something that we find challenging in our lives, we actually find that the blood vessels throughout our brains and bodies actually expand and ready us to be able to rise to the challenge that we are facing. And so stress is not the enemy, as many people talk about it. In fact, stress can really serve us. Each of us has an optimal level of pressure or stress or anxiety, however you wish to think about it, that results in a peak level of performance. And each of our thresholds or each of our sweet spots is going to be in a little bit different place on this bell curve. But you get the idea. The purpose or the goal for us would be to try to keep ourselves in that optimal level of performance by managing the stress in our lives rather than trying to eliminate it or shut it down. There are many, many components of good stress management. Things like developing good nutrition, sleep, and exercise habits, maintaining good social supports for ourselves, engaging good problem-solving skills. In our workshop today, I'll be focused with you on developing some relaxation and stress management skills and healthy thinking skills. So let's go ahead and jump in with relaxation and mindfulness skills. It's important to note that in terms of relaxation, it's kind of like riding a bike. The more you practice it, the better you get at it. And once you've developed the skills for relaxation, then you can call that into play at stressful times in your life. And it's not to say that learning a simple relaxation strategy won't be useful for you to just go ahead and implement right away, but they actually work best when we practice them. That our brains are amazing machines that make associations between things. So if I can associate in my brain a state of relaxation with something like a simple deep breath or releasing a set of muscles, then my body will automatically jump into that state of relaxation. And that's really what relaxation strategies are about. And there are many of them, but one of the easy entry points is actually breathing exercises. Because again, in that stress response, our respiration, our breathing tends to be impacted, that we tend to breathe more shallowly and more quickly. And so if we can do some breathing exercises, where we're controlling our breath in a different way that interrupts that stress response and allows us to be more relaxed and engaged. There are many different kinds of breathing exercises. I'll show you just a simple one, a simple pursed lip breathing exercise. What we do in a pursed lip breathing exercise is that we take a few deep breaths in a particular way. A deep breath in through our nose, filling our lungs completely, holding that breath, and then blowing it out through pursed lips until we have no breath to blow. And we can take several of those breaths in a row. When you take a really deep breath and fill your lungs completely, your diaphragm should actually expand down into your abdomen. And if you put your hand just below your rib cage on your belly, you'll feel your belly come out as your lungs fill up. So let's take just a couple of those breaths together. A nice deep breath in through your nose. Hold it. And out through those pursed lips. And one more breath in. And out. You get the idea, right? I'll put some links on the description of this video to descriptions of these other breathing strategies like belly breathing, equal breathing, the 4-7-8 method, and alternate nostril breathing. Responding to that skeletal muscle priming that happens with a stress response is another really pretty easy way to be able to interrupt that stress response and allow us to engage a relaxed response. Progressive muscle relaxation is essentially where we tighten and release our muscles throughout our body in a progressive way so that we learn how our muscles feel when they're tight and how they feel when they're relaxed. And again, going back to the idea of practice, progressive muscle relaxation is something that I've used a lot in my life. And I know that I hold muscle tension in my neck and head and face. And because I've practiced muscle relaxation a lot, I know that I tend to tense my muscles in my shoulders like this. And since I have paired and made the association between releasing my muscles and a state of relaxation, I can then check in with myself multiple times in a day to see how tense are these muscles. And then by just dropping them, my body kicks in to a more relaxed state of being. And you might have even heard a change in my voice when my shoulders dropped. Stretching, pretty obvious what stretching is, and self-massage are all great ways to try to interrupt that skeletal muscle priming that happens with the stress response. I'll put a link in our video to both a handout I have on progressive muscle relaxation and to a video that's on the Wellness Resource Center YouTube channel. Mindfulness is a really important strategy for relaxation. It strives to bring our attention fully to our mind and our body in the present moment without trying to change our thoughts or experiences. We simply observe what's occurring in our body or mind, our sensations, thoughts, and feelings. And by cultivating an ongoing regular practice of mindfulness, we can begin to see the ever-changing nature of our mind and body, as well as the patterns of thinking that often lead to stress and suffering. This, in turn, provides the opportunity to us to shift those patterns and to achieve greater balance and peace in our lives. There are a few key attitudes of mindfulness that sort of reinforce one another And so cultivating any one of these attitudes of mindfulness can help cultivate the others. Beginner's mind is really just looking at things from a novice perspective, as though through the eyes of a child or an alien landing on Earth. Non-judgment, hopefully, is kind of self-explanatory, trying not to judge what we observe in our minds and our bodies. Non-striving is about allowing what is happening in this moment to be what it is and to not try to make it something that it's not. Equanimity is being able to accept what's happening with peace and calm. Letting be, again, relates, you'll see the intersection between these different ideas. Letting be is allowing something to be, the idea of acceptance. Self-reliance is having faith in our ability to move forward in the challenges of our lives. And self-compassion is a really important component of mindfulness. And that is what it sounds like, being compassionate with oneself. And I'll put a link to a video about self-compassion, as well as a link to the Wellness Resource Center website, where we have a whole bunch of information about mindfulness. A few simple mindful strategies or practices would be things like mindful breathing, which is really just breathing normally for a period of time. Could be 5 minutes, could be 30 minutes. And observing and allowing our breathing to be normal, observing what we see and hear from ourselves during that time. A body scan is really the opportunity to take an inventory, to notice what's happening in our bodies and minds. And a sensory focused activity could be as simple as you sip a hot cup of tea, really noticing the feel of the warmth of the ceramic cup in your hands, the steam and smell and moisture of the tea rising to meet your nose, the feel of the tea in your mouth and as it slides down your throat. Just focusing on those 5 senses that you learned about in elementary school. And I'll put some links to some of these activities on our website. Healthy thinking is really important. The idea that the way that we think about things impacts the way we feel is probably not new to many of you. And this idea is the foundation of cognitive behavior therapy, which is one of the most empirically validated treatments for anxiety and depression. And it really holds that how we think about things impacts the way that we feel and what we do or how we behave. Also, how we behave or what we do impacts the way we feel and how we think about things. And how we feel impacts our thoughts and our behaviors. And so cognitive behavior therapy is really about trying to change any one of those things: cognitions, behaviors, and feelings. Feelings tend to be a little bit hard to direct message, right? And so focusing on the way that we think about things is important for us. As many of you are probably aware, there are sort of ways of thinking or types of thinking that human beings tend to engage with. And some of those are helpful to us and some of them are less helpful to us. And so I want to talk with you for a minute about cognitive distortions, which are irrational thoughts that have the power to influence how we feel. Examples include overgeneralization, which might be, gosh, this happened today, and therefore it will always be like that. Polarized thinking, which might be things like, I'm either going to be wildly successful and happy from this activity, or I will fail and be miserable for the remainder of my life. That black and white, polarized kind of thinking. There are also fallacies of control and fairness, the tyranny of shoulds, which we're all probably familiar with. If we listen to how we talk in our heads, we often say things like, I should be this, or I should do that, or I should be good at that. And then also global labeling, where we take a single instance and make it a globalization, that it's something that relates to everything. And everyone has some cognitive distortions. They're part of being human. However, when cognitive distortions are too plentiful or extreme, they can be harmful to us. By learning to recognize and question these thinking patterns, we can correct many of our cognitive distortions. When we think about restructuring our thinking, there are a few key things that we really try to do. We would need to pay attention or monitor our thinking and be able to identify unhelpful automatic thoughts. We can identify the cognitive distortions in those thoughts and then challenge the unhelpful thoughts. And we might do that through asking a series of questions. So we might ask ourselves, what is the evidence for this distorted or unhelpful thought? What other kinds of ways of looking at this problem there might be? And then we can develop alternative thoughts that are more helpful to us. And the document that you see on the screen is a worksheet for being able to monitor and unpack your thinking. I always think of it as recognizing the thoughts you have, putting them out all on the table so that you can get a clear look at them and evaluate them. And in that process, we can often determine that, yes, that's a distorted thinking, and be able to think about what are some alternative ways of thinking. How could I engage that mindfulness concept of self-compassion in this process? And what might I like to do differently in the future? So that's really the ideas that I had for you about relaxation and stress management. And your step is now to find what works for you and to do it. That you can, again, find some links in the description of this video that will take you to more information about many of these strategies. And feel free to contact us at the Wellness Resource Center if you'd like to learn more. Thanks for joining us, and take care.